We will now continue with the second question and answer session. I'm going to go to one of the faxed questions that were faxed to us from Mexico. It's the first question, speaking of the need to develop social capital in our organizations, how can informal networks and communities of practice grow around the world given the problems of communication in languages and cultural styles?
In a way, I would almost answer the question the other way around, that technology and modern communication eases the issues of language and cultural differences, but certainly opportunities for interaction need to be increased. Virtual teams, that is setting up teams with people who live in different countries and communicating via video conferences and via the internet and computer technology, I think is part of the answer to that. Companies just have to rely on it more, but people maybe need some training. You need to set up protocols on how to interact effectively with people from other cultures and other languages.
Great. Yeah, that's a very good observation, as a matter of fact, that the technology actually contributes to international communication. Our next question is from Mexico again. Go ahead, please.
Muy buenos días.
Good morning. This is Silvia Zavala from the Federal Commission of Electricity of the Northern Division of Mexico. And we're located in Monterrey and Nuevo León. Our question is as follows. In your opinion, how do you think we should integrate concepts like social responsibility and sustainability in terms of the strategies of human resource strategies within the organizations? Thank you very much, and congratulations.
Thank you for the question. That's another one of those kind of difficult to answer questions. Some of those issues I think many people, and maybe even me, view as kind of U.S.-centric, the idea of sustainability and social responsibility, although there certainly are international components to those issues. But I don't see America necessarily convincing everybody else to adopt strategies around those topics that are based on American strategy. I think each country needs to develop its own ideas of what social responsibility means in their context. And the idea of sustainability, I really think, given modern environmental issues, has to be a worldwide concern. But how different countries approach that probably needs to be developed at the local level.
Great. Another great question, great answer. And we stay in Mexico for our next question. Go ahead, please.
We're calling from the University Tecnológica de Tecámac, and my question is, if the organizations then are at a disadvantage when we use the individual talents of each individual and not using the collective talents of an organization, as was mentioned before, are we at a disadvantage here?
Well, I guess we all need to learn to work collaboratively, to share knowledge, to share learning. People who know how to do things need to learn how to share that knowledge with other people. And all the rest of us need to learn how to use the information that other people have and not try to do everything by ourselves. Today, nobody has all of the knowledge necessary to solve problems. So we have to work together.
Okay, last question from New Delhi, India. This is faxed to us. Sharing knowledge and using it productively is a concept easy to mandate but difficult to implement in an environment where nobody gives and everybody sells. What is the key to achieve this concept within organizations today?
Great question. I think the route to global competitiveness is the ability of any organization to learn. And that means we have to learn to share. People don't just sell what they have and what they know, and other people not doing that or not taking advantage of it. Companies have to have, all organizations have to build a culture, a set of attitudes and values within the organization that puts a premium on sharing information, on capturing who has it, making it available to everybody in the organization. And people need to be willing to access that, not just have the attitude that I know everything that I need to know. And sometimes it's difficult to build that kind of culture. It comes from the top. The CEOs or the people at the top have to say this is absolutely important to how we function.
Great. Actually, we have more time for another question faxed in from Panama. This is about talent management, and that's how it reads. Talent management is a great challenge in government organizations given the rigidities of civil service systems and the short-term interests of elected officials and term directors. What would you suggest to make this concept more of a priority among politicians and career public servants?
Again, one of those great questions. Well, there are some issues that are affecting all of us. One is the increased importance of knowledge and of education. And these are things that government officials have to help fund, have to organize, have to put emphasis on. Governments themselves need more highly trained individuals. So the issue of talent management, I think, has to become a universal issue. Public policy, the issues that governments and legislatures develop supporting education, I think are the routes to success for countries as well as for companies.
Great. I believe we are going back to Mexico for our next question. Very good.
Good morning. This is a question from Mr. Camilo Torres, Director of Government Planning of the state. With your experience, what has better results, really? This public recognition to individuals or monetary recognition? What has better results?
This is one that actually is maybe easier to answer than some of the others. Different individuals want different forms of reward, if you will. In some cultures, individual public recognition is not desirable because they're group-oriented cultures, and the culture does not recognize or respect individuals standing out. And in those cultures, maybe money is better, although even in those cultures, group payment, that is, forms of reward that go to everybody, may be better than individual rewards. So from my point of view, the manager needs to understand his or her people and organize reward systems that fit their interests, their desires, and the culture in general. So the answer is you fit, whether it's public recognition or money or other kinds of rewards, to the nature of the employee and what they really want and recognize as valuable for them.
Great. And our next question actually is very interesting, coming from Cuba on a fax. Is human capital becoming less important with the explosion of automation and learner production systems that eliminate more and more human intervention?
Yeah, for sure. We see fewer people in the factory today than has ever been the case before. I've seen some huge factories with almost nobody in them, maybe one or two people that are watching some dials. But the value of the human intellect that went into designing the machinery, writing the software, making all of that system work is more valuable than the machines themselves. So even though we see fewer people, the overall value of the intellectual capital that goes into developing the system, the processes, making the things work is greater than ever before.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, the realization is that somebody needs to write those programs and run those robots and all of that. Okay, great. Next question. China is well known for its skills to imitate and copy products and services, quite often infringing intellectual and copyrights. Do you think that this trend can be changed in other countries, and how?
Oh, wow. I wish we had a simple answer to that question. Part of me, because I've lived in some countries where the view of the importance of intellectual property is not the same as that in the United States, I recognize not everybody values it the same way. So, but can the issue be protected everywhere? I think we have to go that direction. How do you do that? There are international protocols. There's attempts to develop some international law around these issues to make it possible to enforce what might be generally considered a consensus on how you protect intellectual property through copyrights, through other kinds of legal protections.
Great. That's intellectual property is always a challenge, will remain a challenge probably in the future. Next question actually is faxing from Peru. How can we ensure that a strategic international alliance or partnership can translate into superior efficiency for the parties given the many costs of multicultural adaptation and standardization that's involved in that process?
Again, a great question. In all of the work to develop cross-border or international alliances and partnerships, the thing that causes problems is the cultural combining of cultures. And the answer to the question is, if you put those issues up front and make as part of the design of the partnership and the strategic alliance attention to cultural issues, then most of them can be resolved. They've got to be seen as important, though. If they're not, it's inevitable that there will be issues after the partnership is designed around trying to merge and integrate various cultures.
So that has to be put into the project as part of the project. And when we culture is a very, very encompassing concept. It encompasses a lot of things. So how do we actually deal with cultural issues? Where do we start?
Well, the first place we start is to identify the cultural differences. In my area of human resource management, we have to look at issues like pay systems, the way people are organized, reward systems, the way supervision is handled. Some cultures are very hierarchical. There's a lot of respect for bosses. There's some other cultures like the American culture where bosses are not treated any differently than anybody else. And if those can be recognized, then time can be spent on training people in the differences and give recognition to the difficulties of dealing with people who come from a different perspective.
And even within each country, organizations differ in their cultures. So there are cultural differences within countries. And can you comment on that?
Certainly. We talk about national culture as if it was the same everywhere within a country. Clearly, most countries have multiple cultures, but even with those general cultures, it's like a bell curve. There are people on the extremes, and maybe the bulk of people are in the middle, and there are company cultures. Companies may have cultures internally that are very different from even the national culture. So again, the nature of those cultures, the values, the interests that are part of those cultures need to be identified. Most of the time, I would argue companies need to find for partners, no matter where they are, companies that have similar company cultures to them.
And so those companies, even within the same culture, have to allow for understanding each other's corporate culture, company culture, and organizational culture, and accommodate that. And then also translates into accommodation of cultures outside of the country. A lot of ideas and thoughts there to be thought about and challenged by everyone that works in international settings. Thank you for your excellent questions. We have run out of time. We hope that you have enjoyed participating once again in this exciting multilingual and multinational program For further references and study, you can consult your valuable ITC Participants Manual. Our next live video conference, airing July 5, 2007, will be titled Attitudes, Preferences, and Change, the Essence of Success and Happiness. For additional information on this video conference series, including the dates and specific topics for other upcoming programs, please contact ITC. We remind you that all ITC programs are created by and copyrighted to Miguel A. Cardenas and may not be taped, stored, reproduced, or retransmitted in any form, in whole or in part, without the written consent of this author. On behalf of all of us, I thank you for your ongoing participation and interest in this unique program. Thank you and see you soon.